to today's fruitful conversation with Dan here next to me about what does it take to start an international career into teaching. I've had these questions in the past, and I could not think of a better person to actually collaborate on this topic and provide useful insights and intel on how you can level up your game as a teacher in an international environment. Hi, Dan. Thanks for joining me on this topic.
Hello, Darius. Well, first and foremost, thank you for inviting me. I feel super honored to share my journey with you and with the viewers.
Dan is a bit modest here. He is speaking on behalf of Changchun American International School from China, and he is the head of PE department, but also the director of athletics. So, Dan, those are quite some roles over there, and we'll have to touch upon them when we talk about professional growth and transition from teaching. But let's start speaking about your role, how you got here, about the school, and we move from there.
Sure. So, the journey started in 2010. That's when I took my first teaching job internationally at a school in the Emirates, in a city called Al Ain. So that's where it all started, well, 14 years ago almost. This is my 14th year teaching. And the journey took me from Al Ain to South China, spent some time in Shenzhen, and then that led me to a post in Bangladesh. And I think that post in Bangladesh was the foundation and the base of what I'm doing here currently. That's where I had my first take as leader, being the head of department there for about 4 out of 5 years. And then I had the chance to pick this job. This job is very specific here because our school, a size, it's about 500, but they needed someone to come in and at the start to lead the program, the PE program, both primary, secondary. But in addition, they have allowed me to create and to grow the athletics program. In each school, these two departments, the PHE and athletics, are very different components of the well-being in a school environment. So the PHE, it's all they have to do with the curriculum, it's very inclusive with what we have to teach on a daily basis. Where athletics, it's all about creating travel teams and opportunities for students to compete against various other international schools and not only within the country or even outside. So this is something new for me. It's my second year doing the role of athletics coordinator as well. I'm learning as I'm doing it, but I feel very motivated when I see the participation, the numbers of students coming to practices, and now we have actual travel teams. We are 2 weeks away from our first Acamis tournament in Beijing, which is a national league in China.
Well, that's very exciting, Dan. And what I can, grasp reading between the lines over there is that, next level in life comes by going out of our comfort zone. What you did over there with Bangladesh and taking this challenge over here. Now, more specifically and shocking at the same time, because my background is as a business and economics teacher in British schools overseas, and what I came to realize first, my first interaction with someone teaching PE, that is that there's a theory component that focuses on the education of the person that will end up being a member of the society in terms of nutrition, the link between sports and a healthy lifestyle, sports as a way to meditate, to say so, and also the practical side of things of becoming familiar with several sports, going on trips, having practical side of things done there after learning a sport. So I would be very curious if we can dig a bit into this and talk about your experience of a blend between theory and practice.
Absolutely. So, just have to explain a bit how it works. I'm teaching in an IB curriculum. This is my 10th year doing this. So I've been teaching PE in just skill based, where we're not really spend any time into theoretical part, into planning or understanding why we're doing things. It was just pure come in the lesson, have your movement, and then assess participation. There was no component of seeing what they understood or how to do things. Where moving into IB, I had to relearn how to approach PE, especially in the middle years program, MYP. It's very highly academically. So for those viewers who are new to this IB curriculum framework, we're assessing four different components in PE. Three of them have nothing to do with the performance, with the physical participation. We're assessing knowledge, we're assessing planning skills, we're assessing reflection skills. And then we also assess, of course, participation, which this means is that a student who is less gifted or it's not as athlete as others can still score well and do well in the program of physical health education. So there's a reason why when we started to work in the IB, personally myself and my wife, we kind of like tailor our searches towards only IB curriculum schools, just because I can offer more to every single student. Now, this is the part what we're doing on the lessons. Now, for those who really want to take their physicality to the next level, that's where it comes in sport and the opportunity to create teams they can go and have that skill-based focus and then participate. There's no assessment in a basketball team. You just come in, skills, game, represent the school outside. Whereas in the PE lesson, every single unit has a component that is strictly theoretical.
And there was a strong coincidence, let's call it that way, in my background in working as a private tutor for students that were professional athletes, whether we talk about basketball or tennis or football. And they were taking business studies, and they were aiming for scholarships at the university programs, which were strongly anchored into a PE sports professional background. Do you see a lot of cases heading in this direction?
Well, I mean, those who are trying to achieve scholarships, they have to be very high level athletes. And for that, we're talking about national champions at early age, high school students ages 18, 19, who are really at top of their game. To get a scholarship on a sport background, you have to be really good in that level. Now, I'm working at the national school, and the majority of our students are not elite athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really, I mean, we had actually currently we had one elite snowboarder
Mm-hmm.
who chose to leave the school recently because he wants to train in a winter. So he might go and finish the school in Australia where the calendar is different. They go to school from
Yeah.
February to November, so he can be on the slopes from November to February. So it's not really common in international schools to have high, like really elite level athletes. It doesn't matter if it's swimming or football or
Got
basketball.
it, got it. And again, you've just underlined something very sensitive, how, one educational model can no longer cater to everyone, such as, the state public educational system is actually promoted. But we're getting to that, and I just want to underline we have nothing against public education. I am a product of public education, and I'm proud of that. We're just gonna try
As
to
I am.
focus, yes, we're just
As
gonna try to focus on the differences of nuances and maybe why we should consider investing in private education. But before we get into that, Dan, so you're now having a managerial position, also teaching, so still hands-on, transitioned into a different continent culture, but still following an international curriculum. I'm wondering, can anyone teach abroad, or what exactly does it take to actually become an international teacher, or a teacher, as I like to say, without frontiers?
So you're meaning like, can anyone teach? So you were assuming that already someone has a teaching degree when you're asking if anyone can teach abroad.
Yeah, I'm talking about someone that actually works as a teacher in their own country, but at a
Oh,
public school, and now they're thinking of leveling up their game and teaching abroad.
there is only one component needs to be added in that equation, which is English language. That's the requirement. All international schools, the setup is that doesn't matter the country you are in. The international schools are teaching 90-95% of their subjects in English. I've been in Bangladesh. They take Bangla language once a day, once every second day, but everything else, mathematics, chemistry, science, PE, it's in English. Same is here in China. We are having languages, which is 6 times in 8 days, and that's when they take their mother tongue, right, Chinese. But then they need to have all other subjects that are taught in English. So for someone who is living in Romania, for example, or living in Croatia, the next step, besides their teaching degree, which has to be validated, you need to have a certain level of language skills, specifically in English. If you're not able to teach it accurately, how so if you're not able to teach it,
Yeah.
and able to understand, to be able to communicate, not just the communication, but the reading, also the writing. There's a lot of communication going back and forward in a school environment, as you know from your experience. It's not just you going in front of the students and you are, teaching your content. You also have to grade them. So you have to be able to read the language. You also have to communicate with your colleagues and with the students. So you need to be able to write. So for anyone who is thinking that, oh, you know what, I would like to go and teach internationally, just have to elevate their language skills. Now, personally, and this is a very good probably addition to this conversation, I elevated my English language skills driving a taxi in Chicago. That's how I start my basics of, and then after 2 years of driving, I went even further and went to a city college called Truman College in Chicago for a couple of a year and a half to go to the next level. I would elevate my writing skills as well and my reading, right? So basically, before I start teaching, I had my degree. I moved overseas with a non-teaching capacity, and I ended up driving the taxi in Chicago. Proudly, I was young, and I really enjoyed that. But that's where I realized that I need to pick up the language skills. And then 3 years down the road, out of the coincidence, I had this opportunity to put one and one together. One was my qualification from Romania, from Cluj.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a teaching degree in my hand, but I couldn't speak the language I was about to teach. But after a couple of years living and working in the United States in a non-teaching capacity, I had the opportunity to elevate my language skills. And kind of late, not very like early, like late 20s, almost 30, that's when one plus one kind of made
Started
an
adding
addition to
up.
me. I
Yeah,
was like,
they started
that's when
adding
it
up.
made, yeah, that's when I realized, okay, so I have the degree, I have the language skills, now let's see what's next. So that's when I was heading towards international teaching.
It's quite interesting that every person that I have as a guest on this kind of show just emphasizes that it's a long time journey. It's a continuous investment in yourself, and it's like compound interest. Eventually, the snowball effect will explode over there in a person's favor if you start building brick by brick. So, in terms of proficiency level for English, let's say a minimum C1, internationally speaking, so that we can pass on a more standardized message for our viewers.
Yes, I do believe that you should be able to comfortably go through an interview, but also depends on the subject you're teaching. If you can sit in an interview and you're able to understand, communicate, and be understood, I would say that a C1 should be okay. If you have issues into understanding basic conversation, they need to go back and just practice. It just takes practice. Languages are not that hard to pick up. Especially, I find the English language quite easy because everything around us, you have access to a lot of media and uh, you know YouTubes and movies in English. Everything is right there. You just have to tune in and find, and you have to go practically to actually have those conversations. Going to classes as I did.
Hmm.
Learning a language with 100 words vocabulary will get you by not starving, but getting into teaching, you need to go a bit beyond that.
Yep. Okay, so let's say I'm very proficient in English. Let's say I got about 5 years of teaching into a public school. Let's say I've done the formalities over there from legal notary to translation of my diplomas, and they're accredited. What's next? Where on God's name do I start?
Well, so where you're starting is marketing yourself. Now, we're very fortunate to have in our profession, there's various numbers of recruitment agency, smaller, bigger. I can give you a few of them in a second, where they will work with you. So once you think you're ready to go, you have the experience, you have the language skills. Now it's time to go and find some doors, right? Because you need to open some doors. Now, those doors are very difficult to be opened when you are brand new by yourself, which means brand new is it took me 4 years to understand that actually there are recruitment agencies available. I had no clue about the world of international teaching being so large. So there's a couple of agencies, easy to check, from Search Associates to International School Services to Schroll to TES, and the list goes on. If you just go simple search, recruitment agencies for international schools, and you're going to have a list of them. Now, some of them might be a bit difficult at the beginning to accept you in their programs, depends of your specialty and your experience. So that's the first step, especially for a brand new teacher. That's step one. Step two, because the resume doesn't always speak who you are, find a way to attend a job fair. We're very fortunate again in our profession to have few bigger agencies. They're organizing in-person fairs, and there's tons also online, but in person it's easier. um, I just read a study posted by such associates saying that there's about 70 to 80% higher chances to be hired in person than over just a resume and online, because that's when you have the chance to meet your future employer. So that's the first step. Get the paperwork, make sure you're eligible to teach internationally, then find agencies, join two, three, four agencies. The fees are not too much.
Yeah, let's
They're
get a bit into that. So people get scared sometimes of the upfront costs, or let's call it upfront investment needed from their side to actually uh, go with an agency. And in Central and Eastern Europe in general, the culture is not so developed yet from this point of view. And it's kind of a new phenomenon to actually have like an agent, right, representing you when finding a job. But what people seem to be missing over here is that there is a minimum, quite minimum symbolic investment from their side, and it's the future employer that actually gets to be charged if this professional marriage is successful.
Yes, well, I mean, I had to, I used twice. Even now, after X years of experience, I would still go with at least one agency. Now, we all have our preferences. At the
Hmm.
beginning, I was using few and then just less and less. Now I have only one I work with. When it's time, I have my associate. And then the good thing is that that person knows me and my situation and our situation, because we're both teaching, we're teaching couple situation, what's called internationally. He knows us from 2013. So we have a file. I chose to say there because you have all the references, all the file with them. Now the investment, what we pay upfront, it's about 10% what the school pays. But paying upfront, you actually are paying for access to a database, which is very complete year by year. You should have a general idea about what a package looks like in Indonesia, what a package looks like in Malaysia or China. Then you also have access to the job postings. So, for example, rather than you going and checking 20 schools, 20 websites, you see all those jobs on one platform that you have access to, and you just can apply. Click of a button, your profile, once it's activated, has all the information, all your work experience, everything you've done in your teaching career with that agency that you chose to work with or with others. Some colleagues have like three, four agencies they work with, and with just a click of a button, your application, your name gets sent for. Now, working with an agent, it's also a validation because there's a pre-screening in order to get accepted
Hmm.
in a program with one of the agencies. It doesn't just happen in like create an account and it takes 1 minute. It takes days, sometimes weeks, until you are completing all the steps required to be fully active and then have access to all the confidential, not confidential, all the public information that a member can have. You and I'm not anymore active, so we can both go on a website, for example, like Such Associates. We can just see the name of the school and the number of students, but we cannot see anything about their openings, about their packages. Now, once you're a member with that fee, and the fee is the less big. What I like about these agencies is that they're not charging you upfront the money. Money comes less, meaning that you have all the requirements to be their
Mm-hmm.
program. They even check for a criminal report. You need to provide your criminal background check, your degrees, your references. They will not activate you if you don't have minimum 3 to 4 references which are required for a new member. You don't get to, and then once you have all these requirements, then you pay. So they make sure that you can be marketable. You have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, different agencies are charging you less, and it's a 1 year services. Some agencies are doing it for free. Some agencies they charge you a bit more, but it's a 3 year service. So you make a choice of who you want to work with ultimately.
Yeah, and I what I want to underline here is that you exponentially increase your chances of getting hired by working with such an agency, right?
Can I
And
add something?
please, please.
This is my fourth school. Every school and every job I got, it was through an agency.
Yeah.
First job was no accounting, but the second, when I moved from my first post to the second post, it was through a recruitment agency at the job fair. I moved from my second school to my third school, same story, different agency, bigger at the job fair. I had to fly from Shenzhen to London to a job fair to meet my future employers. They were in Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, it was again through the agency. It wasn't this time in person because of couple of years ago we couldn't travel easy. So it was on online, but we were recruited through the agency, and the school paid the fees obviously for recruitment. So I can say that I would even think about. I could use my network. Of course, you can use the network, but no one will validate you unless you go through an approved agency. It's a lot of work done lately into safeguarding child protection. It's a lot of work making sure that we don't have anyone with, I would say, bad intentions on the market.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually experienced this because I was very close of going into teaching into other schools before I pivoted in my career. And I came to realize that there was a marketing difference between what was advertised for the job and when I visited the school campus and actually seeing the fringe benefits associated to that, there was a bit of a delta over there that I've experienced. And that's why again I'm coming back at an agency, especially considering how I was in that situation, not knowing what is globally out there, not understanding what you should be paid fairly because you're now a global teacher. You're not a regional teacher. You don't have to look at the domestic salaries or the index or GDP of the country you're coming from. As long as your English is proficient, as long as you know the curriculum over there, as long as you have the referrals, you're going to be paid as any other person taking that role, regardless of their mother country or domestic country that they're coming from. And it's very interesting. I want to go back a bit to two key observations that you made. One had to do with job fairs. I think I've experienced something similar you mentioned there with job fairs. Why? Because as a teacher, you need charisma and you need chemistry with your audience. So for me, being able to shake the headmaster's hand over there or the head of department and talk about my experiences and even crack some jokes over there about what can go south in the classroom and how you can just forget the textbook and have to improv quite quickly has created some networking opportunities over there and some bonds. So this is just to talk from my experience with respect to the job fairs that you mentioned. And secondly, having that kind of relationship with your job agent or recruitment agent is very similar to our dentist or GP or mechanic. if you can think about it, right? Those people, they move forward with you. They keep a file. They know about you and your wife and your kids. So what might be important for you might not work for someone else. And I think I would encourage all colleagues to establish such a bond, such a professional bond from as early as possible. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, teachers, it doesn't matter if you were new or if you're like returning to a job fair, you need to understand that in a way, we are the commodity. I always say this to every single teacher who is moving around,
Yeah.
might be stressed. Schools cannot physically move their location, and they need, we can. If you're flexible and can move around, you will have opportunities. Now it's up to you to put in balance what's important and what's needed. And that's when we talk about packages and what to look for, because you could look for something, but you're not prepared for what you're getting in exchange. So there's a very careful methodology to select your package according to your moment of your career and the priorities,
Yeah,
because
and
that's what the big mistake.
yeah, and Dan, if it's okay, I would just make an imagination exercise now, considering that you were about to take a new job and explore with you together what else would you look besides the compensation package, whether it's location, climate, size of the school, accommodation, a spouse package. There are a lot of them. I've even seen packages with research grants for teachers that actually want to do
Yeah.
research within the school. But let's talk about you as a head of PE now, moving in the next phase. What would you look at for a new role?
Well, I just moved in, so I don't think that my school expect me to move out anytime soon.
No, no, it's
But when
just
I was
an
searching,
imagination exercise. Yeah,
I will
imaginative.
tell you what basically this position here, so this move to Changchun was also a result of me being the head of PE in Dhaka for so many years. And when this opportunity came, it was a chance. It's very rarely to move to another school in the same role, unless you're head of school or you are a director. But if you're head of department and to move into a school as a head of department, it's not very common. So when I had this opportunity, I took it, of course, because I can continue and I can work on what I started there. Um, Now, when you look at the packages, right, there's always three different, I mean, everything revolves around three main components. It's the job itself, the professional experience that you're embarking on, the paycheck that comes with, and the lifestyle that comes with. Now, especially early in a career, it's very hard to hit all three. It's quite impossible. And you have to navigate where you are, but also before you start making these decisions, you need to know really well who you are. Where are you in a journey? Got to be realistic. I have a different way of having the conversations today with the possible new employers than I had 10 years ago. And our previous search, which was about 2 years ago, things were moving a bit faster. And and personally myself, I had way more comfort and I was way more um, confident in every single conversation with the head of school than I was 10 years ago.
This
That
is the
comes with
role of
experience.
experience. This is the role of experience, and
Absolutely.
with the
But now,
experience, you discover yourself.
yeah, but what you have to be very careful when you're looking for a package, right? Ideally, besides your profession, so you have to define first, look at your baggage. What are you expected to return if you have commitments? Home, for example. That's one way to look for a job if you have a $2,000 mortgage attached to you for next 20 years, or you don't have it. It's one way to look at if you have a traveling spouse with two children, or you don't have that. So once you have your situation defined, then you need to look into what takes priority. Is it the paycheck? Is it the job, the promotion? It is the lifestyle. Now, what I've noticed is that some of the places that are offering a different lifestyle, and people like, for example, island lifestyle, they don't pay that well. Places who are a bit more difficult environment, they pay more
It's
to
like a
compensate
premium.
for it's like in every station, right? It's not the same. to work in Bangladesh or to work in Japan. It's a very different, but both doable. Again, I've been working in Middle East, South China, North China now, and Bangladesh. I wouldn't take back any experience. I made it work. Is it a different mindset to live and be effective in Bangladesh than China? Absolutely. And those are moments. But at that moment, the drive behind that search was profession. It was a move from one curriculum, from the primary years to the middle school. It didn't matter where. The job came, took it, looking back, best decision ever. Moving forward, then this current place, I could also put in balance the lifestyle. I haven't been living in an environment with cold winters and snow since Chicago, right? Before teaching. So my 12 years before coming to Changchun were all in hot and humid environments. And this came across, it's like, hold a second. The pay is good. The school is growing. I can ski in a weekend. I can track in a weekend. What I'm waiting for?
Yeah,
I took the
I
gamble.
was just about to say that, knowing that you're a ski fan like I am. So I was just about to say that's a great opportunity. My heat tolerance and humidity tolerance is a bit lower, to be honest with you. So I tolerate cold better. But just to make a small recap over here, so is compensation, lifestyle, and job role nature
Yep,
itself, right? So there's this combination, triangular combination, which not
yep,
for everyone will be the same. The emphasis will depend on which phase you are with your life, how
yep,
well you know yourself, if you have family or not, if you have financial commitments such as a mortgage or kids with special health conditions, or it can vary very much. But as you said, there's always even the schools will try to make a balance in their offers. So if the lifestyle is not that great, it can be a premium over there on the compensation
yes,
package. But at the end of the day, this is something that points out that the person doing this needs to be extremely adaptable and
yep,
flexible, because you're coming from a different cultural background, different religion, different lifestyle, different gastronomy, if you come to think about it, and you're going somewhere else which is
yep,
radical. So if you don't adapt and you don't embrace that and don't see that as as a possibility for you to become a different person and to enrich your culture, lifestyle, and tastes, it's just going to frustrate you and eventually will make you miss most of the goods, that come associated with that kind of career over there. So that's very interesting and to be noted
well, that
by people. This combination of the three elements that you've mentioned: job
to
itself.
make a joke,
Yeah,
yes, to make a joke here, adding to your the triangle of job, profession, and lifestyle. Head of school, I was one of the conferences, and I remember being in one of his sessions, and this may be a good time to drop a humoristic line. He said this, like, think about this: you're not in Kansas anymore. So the moment you step on this journey, everything you know in your environment, it's not going to apply to where you are. So that's a 180 change. And you need time to learn. And every single place has different specifics, different ways of doing things. And you just have to be patient. But if you accept that, the reward is there as well. I mean, it all started in not just my case, in many other educators internationally. It starts with the adventure for 2 years and it ends up a career for 20, 30 years.
yeah. But if you don't try, you'll never know. And if you don't get
Yeah.
out of your comfort zone, you will be incapable of foreseeing who you can become as a person. So that's why I found this exercise extremely interesting, and I wanted to touch this topic with you. So you mentioned you didn't have experience teaching in European Union, but your experience is mostly in the Emirates area and in Asia. And I wanted to ask you to share some tips with us how can we adapt easier to going through such an experience, taking a job in Asia or in Emirates? What should we look for, be
Okay.
careful at, try to understand as soon as possible?
Now, the one of the things I find very helpful, and that's probably a setup in our profession, international education community, the job and the accommodation to the job, it doesn't start on the day you arrive. It actually starts on the moment you took the job. Let me a bit expand on that. So you are want to go, you go to a job fair in January, you pick up a job in whatever country, let's say, give me an example, Vietnam, right? You took the job, so your communication and your whole induction and your process of getting into the country starts a month later. Now, also the schools, because at this point, the school know that for some teachers, and this is always a mystery, and even for teachers who move from post to post, some teachers take with days to adapt to a new environment. Some teachers takes months. Some teachers don't, and we just have to let them go at some point if they cannot be no fully functional. But um, basically, the schools have a system, and the HR very specialized to introduce you to expectations and prepare you for what you're finding on the ground. Then, when you're on the ground, you have a team of X number of people who are always available to support you. Because in most cases, you need to go to a hospital. You don't speak the language yet, or maybe you're not curious to ever speak the language. I lived for 4 years in the Emirates, and I picked up 5 words in Arabic. And if I had to go to a hospital that only speak Arabic, I need to take someone from the school to help me. Same here in China. We have a large number of doctors that speak English. We have now apps. But if it's something more delicate, I would like to take one of my HR colleagues to come and support me. So that being said, the adaptation has a couple of layers that and a couple of supports that are in place. You're not just taking the job, get your paperwork, and you arrive at the job. You know quite a bit about the place, the job, the specifics of the school, even the place you're going to live in way before you get to the country just to the job.
Okay, and you do this by researching online? Do you take a
No,
school trip, a
no,
visit,
no. So,
or?
so basically, no, your research comes before you take the job. So if you, let's say, you're going to move and live in Cambodia, you should know what Cambodia could offer to you before you apply. And as a rule, you should never apply to schools just because you want to have some fun exercise. You should apply for the schools and the countries you're really interested to move in. What I'm talking about, you already made a research, you know in your mind, with yourself, if you're a single teacher or your family, that you want to take a job in Egypt, right? For example, now, once you made all the research, you took the job. What I'm talking about is that the school itself, once you are under contract with them, because even though the job starts in August, once you sign the contract, you're legally binding to the school and you have to get there in August. But the school specifically starts your accommodation and starts your induction to the place months before you get the place. You
Got
will have
it,
a
got it.
place to
So
live.
basically, you shouldn't be very stressed about it because once you've
No,
taken the
no, no.
job and the school has accepted you, they are part
Yes,
of this transitioning from the cultural habits, line of work, schedule,
everything.
accommodation point of view. So that's
They
that's
even
really
they
great.
even put you normally the last 2 or 3 months. They even put you in the email list. So basically, it's very customary around spring. So maybe last 2 months of school to be already included in the email conversations with the staff emails. But also you get paired socially. So you're always going to have those 3 4 months before you actually move in the country, you're going to have an academic body. If you're teaching mathematics, you will be in touch with your mathematics colleague that stays in the school. You're going to have a social body. You're going to have someone for questions. So you pretty much you have all the tools to arrive here and not be very surprised.
Okay, that's really comforting to actually hear because there are quite some differences from a religion point of view to cultural point of view to outgoing point of view, socializing point of view, especially in Islamic countries. So it's good to know that you're going to have a buddy over there and you're going to have someone that's going to take care of you and help you with this induction. Now, Dan, I wouldn't feel comfortable moving forward before talking about some ballpark examples of what would a good annual gross salary look like starting from for our colleagues that are watching us so they can compare with some of the salaries here in Central and Eastern Europe and gather an idea of what their potential earning can actually be if they find the courage to actually jump on an opportunity like this. So, where would the salary start from for someone that doesn't have international experience, so someone at their first journey, someone that has been to 3 or 4 schools and can go up to someone being 10 plus years of head of department?
So I wouldn't be able to be very specific on exact
No,
number,
ballpark,
but what would
ballpark.
they? Well, it only depends on your experience, right? The training now depends. Some schools, our school pays more for the IB experience than for the masters, for example. Depends on the country. Now, looking at, I can just talk about the context I am in or the context I was before, like in Bangladesh. You can expect as a new teacher, but also some countries you pay tax, you don't pay tax. You can expect to get anything after tax
Mm-hmm.
as a new teacher your first year. I would say 35, 40, 35, 40,000 a year in USD, and then from that it just goes up and up. Now each school has a customary pay scale. Some schools they will pay you exactly the same if you have 15 years experience or 25 when you get in the job, and then you keep growing with year by year.
Yeah.
Then also depends on the location. Within China, for example, there's the difference between our packages here and the packages in Shanghai, for example. But when you're looking into what actually you're earning and what the cost of living looks like and what you're taking home more up here than in Shanghai, for example.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch this topic also because some of the guys are doing the math right now and they're realizing, okay, but the salary might be the same as if I were to work at an international school in Vienna or in London or in Chicago, perhaps. But what I want to say is that there's also the sensitive line of gross and net when it comes to
Yep.
working in Asia or in Emirates and the mandatory contributions towards pension and healthcare. And if you are to look in some of the areas, your gross salary might end up being your net salary because you don't have to pay these contributions. And on top of that, you can also get free accommodation, free meals, and also fringe benefits such as two-way flights to see your family twice a year or tuition for your kid. And if you add all these together, you can end up with a salary that is maybe double from other international schools in maybe Central and Eastern Europe. It's just an example that I had in mind. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, it's well known on the market that the market in Asia it's a bit more productive financially and also savings potentially. Just give an example. Even now, recently, I've been to Hong Kong last weekend for a PE conference, and it was not surprising. I knew that, but it was like kind of like a reminder that this, for example, the same coffee chain, same coffee cup, same size, it costs double in Hong Kong than in Changchun. I was like,
That
oh wow.
real estate.
Or that and for example, a taxi ride, which is about the same distance, about 30 kilometers from my place to the airport, cost here 3 times less that cost in Hong Kong. So those things you have to put in balance, right? That's where you're looking at exactly where you're going, how much you're earning, and how much you're spending to live. And yes, most of international schools they're offering you in Asia benefits such as housing, two-way flights, not very common in Europe. Europe comes with other benefits such as pension if you work there for more than I don't know 5, 10 years.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah.
I've 5 years. Honestly, I at this point I've never been interested uh, to approach the European market because it's just not attractive from not just from the package but also from the facilities, opportunities to move around, and I think that I read something recently about one of the heads of school. Also, there's a bit of difficulty in Europe to kind of change teachers. So let me just a bit explain what I meant through that. Is that there's situations when teachers stay too long in one place and they shouldn't, right? And then you can't really get rid of them that easy because are on permanent contracts. Whereas in most schools in Asia, it's each contract comes with a um, end date
Yeah,
for
it's
two
it's
years. So
it's a
one,
mandate. So you have a contract
yes,
for a mission, and you know what? Dan, I think this is the number one reason why let's say such policies which focus on keeping people on an undetermined period on a certain position fail is because it makes you feel comfortable, no longer want to get out of your comfort zone, no
yeah,
longer strive for performance. I'm not saying that is the case, but this is what I'm seeing. When people know that they can stay forever on that role, and it's hard because of the local legislation to for the employer to actually take a radical decision with respect to their future there, their let's say mediocrity starts to install. So I've actually seen this, but we don't discredit the idea of contributing to pension or the advantages that come in Europe. But then this also, me knowing you a bit personally, this also has to do with your way of looking into the future because you're reinvesting this money on a different form of what pension will be for you when you're going to come back
yeah,
to Romania, if you're going to come back. So what we're trying to say over here is that we don't encourage a spending pattern to increase just
yeah,
because your gross matches your net or gets as close as possible to your net. We're actually giving everybody here a tip of taking advantage of having that money in their hand, not being administrated by the state, and doing something positive for the future, whether they're
yeah.
investing in the stock market, in real estate, buying land, I don't know, whatever they want to do with that over time that can have compound interest and grow in value. We encourage them to do so. So it's a very interesting opportunity to decide your
Yes.
future by yourself instead of the state itself. So you decide how you
But
grow older.
it's not just that, the thing with being an international educator, it could be a starting point that financially can be a very good motivation. No wonder why so many educators are choosing not to work in their own countries and they come over and spend years. But you get to a point where, yeah, you spend 10, 15 years, you save enough money, you have, a good platform if you're going to return home. But then the whole job is the whole life in international education system becomes your personality, and you know that that's where you can contribute the most.
Yep.
When I pick up this position here, we had other options to look different other countries, but when this came across, we knew that we have to be here because that's where we're needed in our expertise, our personality, our own drive to push this school and this environment here to where it is today in just 2 years. And we're just growing our programs. So it always comes to, yes, you definitely want to save, but you also want to enjoy what you're earning because you're away from family, you're away from friends. And even though you keep in touch with them and we go home every July, we still don't see them for 11 months. So
Yeah.
those 11 months, I still need to spend some money on, a few things that, self-care from whatever you want, going to movies, having a massage, going to ski. I spend a lot of money on ski, but that's me. Other people spend a lot of money on buying a new car. I don't know, whatever makes
Correct. You
your
just
boat
have to
float,
find
as they
what,
say.
yeah, you just have to find what makes
But
you
you
tick.
should
So,
Yes, but you should always look back and have some savings potential. And now you have different tools, as you said, different tools with investment agencies, with stocks, with real estate. It's good to put some of those money because most of the jobs, if not pretty much 97% of the jobs, at least in Asia, they don't come up with a school provided retirement plan. They're providing with the funds, they're giving you bonuses, they give you money towards that, but you have to make the decision. I personally haven't worked yet in a school that they were putting part of my salary into a pension fund. I was paid bonuses towards a pension fund that I can use, but I had cash in hand to invest it as I wanted.
Yeah, I
Very
prefer.
few
Yeah, I
schools
prefer
don't
that
have it.
way. Yeah, I prefer that way also, to be honest. So it's up to every
Yeah,
person. So that's why I said for some might be
absolutely.
attractive the European market, and for some the Asia or Emirates
I
market
mean,
out there.
don't get me wrong. I gotta be factual and honest. Don't get me wrong. We all, I mean, I do appreciate the lifestyle comes living abroad, and honestly, even when I go home, it sometimes I'm more confused at the home after 2 3 weeks I'm here because here I have my purpose. I gotta go serve my students. I gotta serve my community, right? But then we're also doing this for money. I wouldn't do. How many of us will be living internationally if tomorrow we all have the pages cut in half? So it's a combination of lifestyle, professional, but also earnings.
Yeah, my grandfather used to say that your home is where you serve, right, or where you're needed, where
Sure.
you're useful. So I
Correct.
can, yeah, I can completely resonate with that. But I want us to move a bit forward and talk about the differences that we see. I taught mostly on the Cambridge curriculum. You said mentioned the IB curriculum, and I want us to look a bit of the differences and why we are fans of these kinds of curriculums as opposed to what we see in the public sector
Sure.
education.
Well, I mean, if we look into different curriculums, personally, I have experience with IB mostly, and I have a little bit with American standardized. Um, Now, because of the need, there is a lot of British international schools, American international schools. Now, some they're keeping to their core, and they do actually teach national curriculum in the international setup because those parents who want to have their kids educated in a British system, but living in, let's say, Jakarta. But then a lot of these schools, the name left is left there for the branding. But like us, we're American school, but we're having full IB continuum options. So I think that each school, depending on their context, they choose what they think is best for their community. After working for so long in IB, I do believe that IB is quite complete, very inclusive, and the rigorosity at the end on the DP1, DP2, grades 11, 12, it's really, really high and it's standardized globally. So the nice part, and this comes with the transition, when you're moving from a school to school, if you stay within the same curriculum setup, now let me clarify, IB is not a curriculum, it's a framework. So think about the IB curriculum as a skeleton of a
Hmm.
human body. That's it. That for us to stay straight, we're not melting in the ground. But the muscles and all those things, it's what we decide as a school that we can make our students as prepared as possible for their college applications. Now there are guidelines, but there's no one who will tell me, for example, in my subject. So let's say it's around concepts. I'm teaching the concept of relationships. Nobody will tell me you have to use handball or ultimate frisbee or end zone games. I choose what I want to use as an activity, serving that concept. That's something new, and I like that this approach into IB. Now I've noticed that that's a huge influx of more and more schools going into the IB realm because of the inclusivity of the programs. But also is marketing because once you're working with these agencies, like doesn't make it British curriculum, American or IB, you need to have regular authorization. Even though we're fully authorized every 5 years, 4 or 5 years, we have the IB coming over, they're checking on us. Are you doing what you said you're gonna do in terms with the IB values?
Yeah, and I think this is a kind of a pedigree effect, right? Because if you want to show your
Yeah,
pure breed, you gotta show that you're following the standard, the best practices, the benchmarks over there, and you continue on that knowledge that was cascaded, so
yeah,
that the highest standards of education can be maintained. I also
sure.
saw this in the British education. I personally believe that this is the one thing that I admire most when it comes to Brits, the capacity to export excellent educational programs
Yep,
that are geo-agnostic globally. So wherever you follow this program, as you mentioned, if you got to go in a different country, if you go on the same
yep,
curriculum, you're not going to have a problem adapting within the environment, the people around you, the teaching style and the curriculum you follow. And I agree with you very much because the curriculum does not tell you how to get to a
yep,
result, just tells you that by the time you finish that lesson, that kid needs to understand this, that, and the other. And I think it gives room for a lot of creativity for those teachers that are out there for this vocation.
yep. And it's also choices, right? If you're looking into a big city like give me a name, Shanghai, for example, or Hong Kong, you need to have variety. So when it comes to yes, I want to open a school, or it comes to the choices you make, if you're going on a market in a city that already has five American schools, you might not succeed. So that at the end of the day, you have to think about schools because even though some schools, very few are non for profit, all the schools are there to make some money, and either they invest more money into the school or they're just for profit. At the end of the day, there's an owner, there's a direction of making some money. Now, also, they decide what curriculum will be best and then the numbers. Because if you are, let's say, you are that set to have a British curriculum, but you have 200 kids join the school, and then you choose to let me try to swap it to IB, and you have 500 kids coming in, then it makes a bit, a simple choice which curriculum you're going to use.
And it's quite interesting what you mentioned over there. There is this idea that was painted in the past years that schools are non-profit, especially international schools. Now, from my experience, unless those are backed up by, let's say, the L'Oreal Foundation School, right, or the
Yep.
Mercedes-Benz Foundation School, those schools are gonna struggle in providing the best
Mhm.
standards. So when you run this as a for-profit business, it can also have advantages. I remember back in the days working with an international school on how we can generate additional revenue through new lines of business such as extracurricular activities on online tutoring, right? That this was prior to the pandemics kicking in, which was a new thing from exporting this kind of product. And we saw what additional revenue can do in terms of the impact of the overall school, such as an increment in the salary of the teachers. It meant less attrition, higher motivation, more involvement in terms of the problems of the kids and how they were tailoring the lessons, each individual over there. So it can have a lot of positive impact over there. So I just want to underline that people point fingers and say, oh, that school is for profit, but that is a good thing there for profit because they can use that profit to actually develop, maintain those standards. And I just want to underline from experience, and I hope you will back me up over here. They're not very keen, these international bodies such as BSO or IB inspectors, to actually give you second or third chances in case you're not following protocols or guidelines
Of
or
course, yeah.
not respecting what you promised to respect. And once you get on that blacklist, the kind of dream of having such a private school is going to be long gone for you. So you only get one chance to make the right impression. So you can understand how fragile this is from an investment point of view. So that's what I
It's
wanted to
not
say
just
from my
that.
experience.
It's also credibility, right? Because if you're on the market and there's multiple players in the market, you just have to have credibility, and then it all comes with the networking. Because once you are these days, it's not just the curriculum that you are having, to go through authorizations. There are different other bodies like Council of International Schools or WASC from the United States that they are giving you authorization. So basically, a similar idea. You're saying what you're doing, but then you kind of have to show them that you're doing what you're saying, and they'll say, okay, so we're gonna give you the standard. And once you have those, like once these humongous bodies of accreditation are on your website, that means validation. That means that you are having a standard. Compare this to any other business in of course, there's different. You go to Cluj, and it includes different restaurants and different levels of care of how they run the restaurants. But nonetheless, every single restaurant has to go through a standard and authorization process,
Yeah.
right? Same with the schools. There are different levels of schools, and there's also different levels of managing the schools. But every single one of them has to go. If you want to have validation, you cannot be on the market without having been authorized by multiple bodies such as CIS, WASC, NEASC, ERCOS, just to name a few of them.
To make an analogy here for some of our viewers which are not that familiar with these international institutions, guys, if you're a part of the Accord Hotels chain, it means that 3 stars or 4 stars when you show up on your hotel actually mean the same thing in Austria as they mean in China. Or if you're part of a Star Alliance, a flight company, for international flight, it means that the amount of comfort your passenger will receive during the longer flight will be the same if they go with Turkish Airlines or if they go with Lufthansa. So that's what we're actually trying to point out over here. Okay, but Dan, so right now I want to talk a bit about social life or life after school, right? You mentioned spending some money on your hobbies over there, but what I'm curious about is how easy it is to make friends and maintain friendships, considering that you kind of move around with years quite often.
Well, I mean, I've just spent a week in Hong Kong, hang out at the conference, but then also reconnect and hang out with a colleague that we worked with her for 3 years in Shenzhen, and another one that we worked for 4 years in Dhaka. They've never met because there were two different circles, but we all, like all of us, hang out together. And we're like kind of amazing to be in the same spot. Oh, we worked with you 3 years, we worked with you for 4 years. It's not that hard. Now, most people who take these jobs internationally, they are a bit more, I would say, flexible and adaptable. But also, everywhere you go, there is a after school life, and there's a market for whatever you are. If you are a family that has 2 kids there, and you want to pursue, I don't know, figure skating, or you want to pursue dancing, there will be a place for that. I like to swim. Within 2 weeks, 3 weeks of living in Changchun, I found an indoor pool on my way to school back and forth. I can go and swim every day because it was my priority to find that place. And there, I already have few friends that we just meet no for no other swimming time, right? But then most of the social life starts within the school. Because once you arrive, most of the schools there's always something happening. Like there's yoga maybe, or there's a pickup basketball Sunday after school, or like now, we're starting the ski season this weekend. It has been open since Friday, but we're going on a Thanksgiving weekend there, and it's gonna be about 10, 12 of our colleagues that it only began with two, me and
Mm-hmm.
my wife, and then now we're a group of 10, 12. They're going there for a ski. And then one of our colleagues started, for example, a yoga setup, which brought an instructor from outside, and there's already people who are joining the club. Then again, depends of your situation, family, no family. There are opportunities for you to find. I haven't been in a place yet that I couldn't find. Now, obviously, the social life in Dhaka it's not as rich or such as the one could be in Shenzhen or Shanghai. The social life that I have here in Changchun suits me better than in Shenzhen because of the things I like. I can find it here easier. But there's something for everyone in any
And bottom
place you
line,
go.
yeah, and the bottom line, I think it depends a lot on your personality and what kind of person you are. If
Absolutely.
you're a lonelier and you like to practice,
And then you can do
individual
that.
activities, you
You
can
can
do
do
that. And
that.
there's a framework that will cater that for sure. But at the end of the day, I think if you build connections, especially from the same environment, being familiar with this career, they kind of understand that
Yeah,
you cannot talk or see each other at a daily basis, but you can take advantage of different conferences or events or half-term
yeah,
breaks to actually get on a flight to a different country where your friend
yeah.
with
It's
which you
different.
work,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, with which
I
you work.
mean, I always say this that in every single post you are going to spend some time, you have to be professional. You have to be colleague with everyone. I mean, do we like all of our colleagues? Do I like always can I always work on outside school? Absolutely not. I cannot really deny that. But am I effective and am I supportive with every single one of them? Yes, because that's my role as part of an international school community. But now you always you gotta be colleague with everyone, but you can pick and you're gonna pick some friends and successfully in every place we've been I was able to connect to a deeper level and even travel with some of the colleagues. And that's the beauty right now. I'm just looking, for example, a random country, Australia. I could spend a month sleeping in, like crashing on friends, on the couches or bedrooms, because that's how many friends I have from Gold Coast down to Sydney and all the way to Adelaide. It's just the way it works. I remember about a few years ago, we took a trip in Korea and we spent time in about four cities. In only one city, I had to be in a hotel for 2 days, because once you go to a short term and you spend 2 days and you're reconnecting with a colleague that you work with for 2, 3 years, they won't let you stay in the hotel. They're going to make sure the bedroom is ready for you. So that's kind of the connectivity that you are having, and that's a nice thing. Coming up on Christmas soon, there's a friend that they works now in Shenzhen that was recommended by me there. We're gonna reconnect here for a week of ski next in my backyard.
Yeah, I kind
So that's
of, I kind of know where this is heading because it's something similar that I'm practicing also. And as I
yeah,
mentioned, depends on each person. So we're hosting them also at our guest house whenever they're coming to Romania and
yeah,
exposing them to traditional habits, especially during Christmas with traditional food and take them into the mountains. So yeah, if someone offers you these favors, it's also because as a let's say a personal business card of who you are and how they feel with you and the relationship that you nurtured over there. So thanks
well,
for
those are deeper connections, right? Those are not the ones that so obviously, I mean, I had more than 100 colleagues at every school I worked. I don't keep in touch with all of them. I
yeah.
cannot physically, right? But those that we kind of like have the similar, mindset, similar view
Hmm.
of life, then you just spend some time and invest time if you reconnect, and then it doesn't cost me anything every couple of weeks to send a message, hey, XYZ, how are you doing? And then, oh, by the way, I'm going to be, coming in, I don't know, passing through Vietnam in 2 months. Are you around or something like that?
Yeah, that's really cool. So I'm excited whenever this happens, to be honest. So I got a question coming from parents, especially, and I was asked several times. Do you think it's worthy of us investing in private education following an IB or Cambridge curriculum? And I had a challenge answering this, especially because I don't want to influence someone's finances at this granular level. But I'm the kind of person who sees education as the highest investment someone can make in their lives, and it's something that it's gonna help you
Yeah.
on the long run. So for me, it will always be yes, but of course I'm gonna be selective and know what I'm looking at when I'm deciding which school and when I'm making this sacrifice from a financial point of view, especially because it's not really economically affordable for everyone. And I wanted to see if you get this question also on how you look at answering it.
Well, I mean, it's like it's very hard to compare because you're basically buying two different products. it's not fair to say that, of course, if you can afford it, you go for it, right? I mean, if you can afford to go around on a nice new Audi, why not? Why would you drive, older car which is 20 years old? Now, coming to education, it's very, I think it's wrongly to compare, public school costs this much, or this school costs this much, or that school costs this much. I think you have to look into what you are buying, obviously, and where you're buying it, because having the same bottle of water at your thrifty store down your building, or buying it at the airport or on the plane, it's different cost. It's just because the location of the where you're buying. The same thing now. If you're a parent who is living abroad and is paid well and wants their kids to be educated in international schools and then pursue universities, have access to more than one line of study after, for example, if you are just studying in German or Croatian or Romanian, it's very hard to go to a university where you can study in English because you don't have those skills, right? Now, all these international schools are pretty much tailored to get you prepared for applications into multiple countries, multiple universities, all English taught curriculum. So if that's what you want, if you want your child to make sure that has access to the whole world, the whole universities there, doesn't matter if it's Netherlands or if it's Belgium or United States or Canada, as long as they are following an international school, they will have one, the knowledge, they'll have the language skills, and they'll have the certificate to authorize them or give them that application process. You cannot apply or be taken, into a school in, I don't know, North America if you don't have the skills you need for that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think investment, and also then think about the access to a variety of teachers from various countries. They all bring positive things on the table. So I would say that definitely every single parent who can afford it and wants to have a bit more broad view, right, and then opportunities later, I think international schools, there's a reason why, especially in Asia, it's exponentially like went up. There's like hundreds of schools around. It's just because there is a need, and you can't really open schools if you don't have, a hunger for it. Because at the end of the day, it's the market decides, right? You open a school, you have students, you can operate. So the fact that, keep in mind, 2014, I was starting in Shenzhen. I don't think there were maybe 4 or 5 international schools at that time. Within less than 10 years, there's probably triple the number.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I see that also, and I see there's a hockey stick growth effect when it comes to private education, and exactly
Yeah.
as you said, it starts from an early age, but it's preparing you for life. So yeah, I kind of see the same thing, and thanks for the granular examples and real time examples over there. But let's say that I've been teaching for a while now, and I want to go, let's say, hands off teaching and maybe think of a management role or running a school or running multiple schools because we have these chains. So, from your experience, then, what was the set of skills and what you needed to develop to actually be able to lead others or support others or manage others?
It's a process, right? So basically, it's a different role when you just look at your piece of the pizza, right? Pie, let's say, and you just focus on your output and what you have to do. And it's different kind of skills. It all comes with organization, being able to collaborate, patience when you look into managing teams. And my role is kind of like it's called middle management, where it's, I think, the sweet spot where you're not really at a high level, where there's a bit more difficult decisions. It's a lot more to do with trying to, and you cannot make everyone 100% happy, but you try. And then definitely, if that's your aim, you're gonna fail 100% because you can't. But then I think, and that's where personally I decided my career to stop at middle level management is It's a sweet spot when you are kind of the pendulum and the balance between up and down.
Hmm.
And it's a lot of negotiation skills, and then also you have to filter the information, what comes from above you, what goes no under, and how you gonna bring those in harmony. But also I need to make sure that the team functions right. It's not anymore about only what I do. So when you take in a role of managing, you need to have those skills. Again, patience, collaborations, compromise ability, and just kind of like look at the long game and find ways to utilize your team at their best. Like input. You don't look at the team what X, Y, Z doesn't have. You look at what each of the component it has, and you put those together and you focus on that. One of your colleagues in the team might be better at writing curriculum. Let him or her do that. Someone could be more, suitable for managing, students. Let him do that. So basically, you kind of have to look into focusing on the strengths of the team rather than picking out, like weaknesses part by part. That's the way I see it. And then just be very very flexible. Be able to just that because you are as a manager as well, you are kind of like responsible for it, but also you're serving a purpose into a bigger puzzle. It is not about you. It's never about you. If it's about you, then you're failing from the beginning.
For
It's
our
it's
for
always
yeah, for our football fans out there, to make an analogy, Dan, I think you gave a very similar answer with Jurgen Klopp from Liverpool and Ancelotti. So yeah, they're looking at the strengths and talents of their team members to be able to build the team around that. So
yeah,
they would actually be together with a chemistry that would create a very strong and prepared team for what's coming. So that's a very nice that's very nice to hear. And also, I like the fact that you emphasize very much on emotional intelligence and about understanding how others are, and putting them first, and after thinking, how you can get from point A to point B together as a team. So that's kudos for that, and I'm happy to hear that, Dan. We're getting close to the end over here, and I think one or two questions for you. I think I would like to discuss with you if there are different ways of experiencing working in a tier one, tier two, tier three school, or otherwise put, if you go at a top school,
yeah.
how would it be better for you as a teacher besides the direct pay?
That's something that I'm really battling against because characterizing schools, what means tier one, what means tier two, what is tier three. At the end of the day, what is very important is your own situation and your own role in the school you are. You could go and work for a, let's say, on paper tier one school, but then your work-life balance is gone. It's on the window. You don't see yourself, about how much you have to do or how many things you have to coordinate. Or you can work in humongous schools that I appreciate. They have to exist, but when you're working with 20, 30 colleagues only in the PE department, it's a bit hectic for me. But that's me, right? So that's where I think when you're ranking schools, you always have to look at your own situation and what are you doing for the school. I believe I'm working in a tier one school because what I do is fantastic, right? But that's my personal thing and my role, and I'm very motivated. I wouldn't trade. I've just been to a fantastic campus, massive school in Hong Kong over the last weekend, as I showed you before for that conference. At this moment, I wouldn't trade my situation here at a much smaller school than that one, just because I believe that we're building something special here. And I believe that I'm part of the something special we're building. Now, obviously, everyone has their own opinions, and that's okay. But as long as I believe in what I'm doing and I'm the right place at the right time, and this place is the best place, because it's not just about who has the bigger field or the biggest
Yeah.
gym or the biggest number. It's about the community. I'm working in a school where at this point I know every single student in a secondary school that I work mainly. by first and last name. I know every one of my colleagues like that.
I
You know,
think
and I
it's
learned. So for me, this is tier one, right? I've been working at school with 2,000 no students. I don't even know remember the names, but that's for me tier one. For someone, tier one might be an elite school in Singapore, but then when you look at what they have to do on a daily basis and the amount of stress coming in with that, again, that's a choice.
But I
So
think
that
you've
that
actually you're so we're talking now about private education and a career in private
yes,
education, and I had this conversation in other industries so many times about looking at things very standardized, right? So you are actually the one that's gonna decide if that job, that
yes,
career is a tier one, tier two, tier three kind of experience for you, because what works for you will not work for someone else. And if you
exactly.
just follow the marketing that is out there, you're gonna pay a very expensive price. Whether it's gonna be your work life balance, whether it's
Yep.
gonna be your way of living there or the compensation package, you are the one responsible for deciding how you're gonna grade that. Eventually, of course, there are factors to follow and things to discuss with your recruiter and to do your research. But I 1,000% agree with you in the way that someone can experience this. And one final question would be how, as teachers, do we need to actually consider very much, or do we need a special set of tools or skills to actually deal with classrooms where we have a plethora of cultures and religions?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, choosing to go work internationally, you are expanding your um, cultural, understanding of where you are. So what happens is before you take a job in a place, learn as much as possible about the specifics of the place you're going, right? Because even some like simple hand gestures could be seen really not very good in a place and very good in the other places, right? Um, when you're walking in a school, you also are international, right? You are not the typical, let's say you work in China, you're not the typical teacher going in a class. You are also different, right? You're also bringing your cultural background and your own personality and pronunciation and your grammar, everything comes with you, and you are the symbol of that culture experience. And that means when you are in a place where there's like 20, 30 different nationalities, you just have to be a bit more sensitive. And there's some topics like I never get engaged in conversations about political views, religion, choices. I just stick with my subject because kids can talk. I don't mind it. They can have their own talk about purpose of life. Doesn't mean, but I need to be neutral. So the moment that even if I would be strong, and I have my own set of values and beliefs, but I don't bring them with me at school. We're trying to be as neutral as possible and basically nurture their development, not trying to change their opinions on what I think is right or not right in this world, right? Because that's not my job there. My job there is to make them feel safe and to learn into my subject. So when you go to a different place, just stay away from those kind of conversations. Do not engage in cultural sensitive topics, and each country has its own. And that's where you need to learn super fast. And the schools are quite good in that, into getting you kind of like familiarized with what you shouldn't do or what you should know, not say. And that's pretty much comes with experience because you're walking in a place where you have to be careful that you're not offending. And again, it's not your purpose. You're there to teach your subject, not to talk about the life of XY personality,
Hmm.
right? So that's very risky. So that's why personally I would advise any one of our viewers not to engage in sensitive topics in any form of shape into a school context. There's
Noted,
a
and
reason
yeah,
why.
yeah, noted and extremely valuable to be kept in mind of what they're done. From my experience, I could say that there are kind of I think five keywords that I would pass on that are universally valid and applicable. I think common sense is one of them, then empathy, discipline, proactiveness, and keeping a promise. I think you cannot go wrong in any country with these, but I would definitely keep your advice and follow it and not engage into such sensitive topics.
Now
So,
just there are also patience, right? Patience and again, we don't know what everyone's going through. So
yeah,
that's when you're having those five that you just listed, which are really valuable, add some patience and just you're there for them. You're not there to create conversations that are not unnecessary, right?
yeah. Dan, what would you tell yourself? And this is a question we close with. What would you have uh, passed on to your younger version 10 years ago if he were to start on this path again? What's the advice you would pass on?
Well, I mean, congratulations for starting this adventure. Congrats for having the courage to leave a far better paid job and life in Chicago to go and start a teaching career on pretty much very low income compared to today, which is natural, right? Because that's natural progression. The more you experience, you see what I like about jobs like ours, like highly professional and academic jobs that with experience. I mean, I'm talking about jobs in the field of higher education, right? Not just teachers, doctors. The more you have more experience, if you are working in a hourly paid job and you do same thing over and over again, I always have my comparison with when I was driving a taxi in Chicago. It's like I had to spin the wheels. I had to move the wheels to make some, and then it doesn't matter if I have 1 year of driving or 5 years. I still had to spin the same number of miles to get the same income. Whereas in education, I can say that with years I work less, I work smarter, I work more effective and efficient, and I earn more because that comes with experience. So that's what I would say. Keep going. Now, for those who are thinking, who are watching the show, who are thinking, just go try. I mean, the worst case scenario, you're moving away from your comfort zone. You're spending 2 3 years in a different country. It is not meant no, for you. You just go back. It's that simple. But then living all your life with what if, that's where for me was the choice not 10 years, but exactly about almost 14 years ago was the choice like, what do I do? So I jumped on this journey and it's still going on. It's fantastic. I'll say to myself, congrats for having the courage to jump on this fantastic journey.
I would say to myself that you've been a bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and making those radical decisions, but hey, you're the guy you're today and continue to invest in your education. So, Dan, thank you so much for this fruitful conversation today, which I hope will help a lot of folks trying to aim for a career in this industry. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, thank you for the invite, and it's been an honor being on your show.